Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm so glad that you're here because together we're going to work through big stuff. I've spent 7 years in the business of transformation, coaching, writing, speaking, all of it centered on one thing. What happens when a person is in the process of becoming someone new, when their old identity doesn't fit anymore and the new one hasn't quite arrived yet? When you're standing in that in-between, it can feel like you're standing in nothing. I know that place well, professionally, academically, theoretically, and more recently, when my mum died, I learned it all over again. Grief does something that nothing else does. Grief doesn't just ask you to feel, it asks you to examine. It asks you to examine every assumption you've carried about who you are, every role that you've been playing, every piece of armor that you may have even forgotten that you're wearing. And grief asks you, what do you actually believe? What do you want? And who are you when there is no one left to perform for? I didn't answer those questions with words, at least not at first, because I didn't actually even understand the questions. I painted my way through this last 6 months. I wrote and painted. I wrote 2 books in that time. Both of them were circling the same territory of life, death, and everything in between, and everything way outside of it, what happens before and what happens after. And also in that time, I created a body of painting that I recently put on show. Now, I'm known as many things. If you've been following me for a long time, you might remember me in my blogging and my cooking and the days where, and photography, the days where I was doing lots of creative things to stay afloat. I have morphed my career many, many times in the last 12, 13, 14 years. And I'm not known for being an artist. I will call that out. It is known that I started painting in COVID, but I haven't really talked about it that much. But I'm not going to be falsely modest about it. It is something that I have grown to really love. And because I've done it a lot, I have grown better at it. And I may not be known as an artist, but what I am is someone who has spent years helping people to navigate the shedding of their identities. And then I found myself in the most total version of that process that I have experienced probably since the death of my father, which also asked something very similar of me. And that's when I switched from being a journalist, and I was journalist, food writer, food photographer, massive hustler, to quitting writing. And that's when I became a coach. I went and studied and completely changed my identity after the death of my father. Now, something similar has happened throughout the death of my mum. And this work, this art, this writing, more specifically the art, it's not a side hustle. And the writing as well, the books that I've done, they're not a side hustle. It's all the same work in my heart and in my soul. It's always been the same work. It's an expression of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm processing, and I move it through a different avenue, if you will. There was a piece in the collection called The Matriarch. If you've seen any of the marketing material for it, it's the one of the, it's kind of bronze and golds with a woman, a very sort of soft, ethereal looking woman with these big, big magnolias. And I began painting that in my mum's final weeks. And I didn't fully understand why I had to paint the magnolias. I just knew that I had to. I'd never painted them before. I wasn't sure if I would ever paint them again. I just knew that I needed to be painting the magnolias. And it was only after I finished the painting that I discovered that the magnolia is the flower of the matriarch. It is the flower of strength, dignity, and enduring love. Now, what's interesting to me about this is that I didn't have the language for what I was feeling. At that time, I had a lot of pre-grief, which is a strange thing because the person that you love is still here, but you are feeling all of these mixed feelings of rage and resentment and anger and heaviness and sadness and, fear, all sorts of things. So I didn't know how to express what I was feeling, and it came out through a paintbrush. And I didn't know that I didn't intellectually know about the meaning of magnolias, but some part of me, some essence inside me was drawn to the magnolia. So some part of me knew. And that's kind of what this whole collection that I just created is. It is language, it is emotion, it is questions, thoughts, beliefs, answers, cosmic knowings, all came out sort of sideways through color and through texture and through a different kind of rawness and honesty to what people are used to seeing me do. It is a rawness and an honesty that is possible when you stop trying to explain yourself and just create something that is true. And that is really what I did. I painted the essence of different feelings that I was experiencing through this transition, through this period of deep grief and questioning, but also so much beauty. There was so much beauty in this last 6 months, and even just giving myself the time and space to write and paint rather than like pushing myself through this idea that I had to knuckle down and keep going in my business the way that I usually do. The pieces that I've painted aren't about my grief. They're really about the human experience of when we are taken apart by life and having to decide piece by piece what we want to put back. And everybody experiences this at some time or another. It might not be through losing somebody. It can be through any of the major life transitions that we have, which can be breakups, it can be job losses, it can be childbirth, it can be marriage, it can be any of those moments where you find yourself really questioning what is important to you and where do you want to go from here? What parts of your previous identity are you going to take forward? And what is available for you now? And it's not just because you have this like big thing and then you decide, well, I can change who I am now. It's about these big things give you a emotional level of growth and expansion that changes who you are in many aspects. And it can be very, very difficult to understand that if you haven't been through something big. But we have all been through big things. We have all been through big things. It doesn't have to be the death of somebody that you love. It is just those moments where you really get knocked on your ass and it's time for you to sit back and take stock and question what is next for you? Where do you go from here with all of these learnings and understandings that you have gathered throughout this experience? Now, this didn't happen completely by accident. This, like before I wrote The Chocolate Bar Life, I said to my then business coach, Emma McQueen, business is really hard. Being an entrepreneur is really hard. Having your own business is really difficult. Part of me wonders if I should just quit everything and write books and paint. And she said to me, well, you can do that. You completely have permission to do that. Do you think you'll get bored? My husband said the same thing. He said, do you think you'll get bored if you did that? And I didn't know the answer. And at that time of my life, quitting my business and doing this felt like quitting, right? It felt like this is too hard, so I'm going to stop it and like shut myself away and do this other thing. Now, I gave myself 6 months. I'd put that in my diary because we actually thought that my mum was going to be dying in January. So I gave myself 3 months before and 3 months after so that I could spend a lot of time with her before and then I had time to recover after. But because she died earlier, what actually happened was I had 6 months where I could use the time however I wanted because I had created that space. And so I decided, why did I decide? Maybe it wasn't a decision. Maybe heart made the decision for me that I was still going to use that time spaciously. Now, previous times in my life, I have filled up all of my time when I'm feeling big feelings. I've filled up all of my time with busyness because then you don't have to feel all of the feelings. But I'm doing things very intentionally and very differently through this period. And that one of those things involves I haven't had any alcohol since New Year's Eve. I have wanted to feel all of my feelings in a really intentional and mindful way. And part of that has been to use this time more creatively as a part of the process. So the reason that I'm sharing all of this is not just to say like, oh, hey, I've just created this new thing, get amongst it. It's to say in the tough stuff, there is also really beautiful opportunity for you to explore in new ways and in different ways. And out of that tough stuff can come really beautiful and positive things. The light and the dark exist together. That is the duality of life. There is always going to be the balance, the harmony, the dance between the good and the less good, right? The harder stuff. So I wanted to share where I've been this last 6 months and what I've been doing. I am still here. I am still working. I am still, I'm about to go back into travel with my speaking. But I did just have 6 months of doing something different to what I have done in previous years in my career. Now, I learnt a number of things through doing an art show. And somebody actually at the gym, my friend Lucas, said to me, one thing that he's noticed about me is I have a way of announcing something that I'm going to do, and then I work backwards. Now, I have done that my entire life. I remember I put on a play in my 20s. I booked the theatre. I announced that I was doing a play, and I hadn't even written it yet. And I pretty much went from there. I get the idea at point A. I go all the way out to point Z, and then I decide to backfill the rest of the points that need to happen. So I suppose I did do that to a certain extent with this. I decided that I was going to have an art show. I went and saw I went actually to get a little bit of Botox in my lovely friend Hillary's brand new shop at her new business, The Form Aesthetics and Skin in Thirroul. And really what I saw in this beautiful heritage building and room was a lot of blank walls. So I saw this opportunity to, maybe see if she wanted to hang one of my pieces, because I have pretty much filled up all of the walls in my house. And I said to her, honey, you need a bit of color on these walls. And she was like, I know, I'm going to buy some art. And then I realized that maybe we could launch her new business and have an art show at the same time. And I said to her, what is your intention for this event that we throw together? And she said the coolest thing, because she could have said, to find new business, to meet some mature ladies who also might want some Botox. But she said, I want to create a community event where people come and people connect with each other, and we see art and we talk about, life, and we just have a beautiful time. And I realized that I was aligned with completely the right person. And this is where I wanted to sort of show my art. And the room is beautiful. It's this beautiful Art Deco room. So let me share with you the 5 things that I have learned through the process of hosting my very first art show. Number 1, do it scared. When we set ourselves these audacious goals, there's going to be butterflies. There's going to be trepidation, because you got skin in the game. And frankly, if you've got a goal that doesn't give you any kind of trepidation, maybe you haven't set yourself a big enough challenge. Not every goal needs to absolutely terrify you, keep you awake at night, terrifying that you're going to land on your ass and the whole world's going to laugh at you. But we do need to have these goals that are consistently just on the edge of our comfort zone, because that's how the comfort zone grows. So you don't necessarily need to be wildly outside the zone, but always just like a couple of toes over the edge of the comfort zone so that your comfort zone can continue to grow. Now, let me tell you, I can stand on a stage and deliver, a leadership workshop to a couple of hundred people, whatever, or do a keynote to, 1,000 people, whatever, okay? I will be a little bit nervous, but I don't lose any sleep anymore. In the early days, I used to. In the lead up to this, there was only going to be maybe 40 people in the room, and most of them were going to be friends. Oh my God, I lost sleep. I was lying awake, frightened that I was going to do this big vulnerable thing and look silly. But that's the challenge, right? That is the challenge. This was a new challenge for me because I have mastered the other challenges in my life. Now, number 2, audacity is excellent. Audacity is great. When I said to my friend Carolyn Tate from Women's Divorce Club that I was feeling really audacious by setting this thing and saying that I am having an art show, she said, excellent. The world needs more audacious women. And I just love that, because it's absolutely true. We often feel like we need to wait until we are ready or get lots and lots of evidence that we are good enough or okay to put ourselves forward into a certain environment, rather than saying, hey, you know what? I'm gonna jump in this pool and teach myself to swim along the way. Number 3, the devil is in the details. I invited my friend Lizzie Muller over. She is, just by chance, a professor of art, and she also teaches curation, right? So if anyone is going to have a little bit of knowledge and intel for a first-time art show person, it's going to be Lizzie. So I invited her over, and there were 2 reasons that I invited her over, if I'm really honest about it. One of them was because I wanted to show somebody my stuff before I showed everybody my stuff, and I really was seeking some validation. I wanted her to tell me that I wasn't making a really big mistake and I was about to be humiliated in front of my entire town and friend group, which she did in a very, very pragmatic way. She said, that my work is very unique. It is not necessarily what is coming out through the modern artists that are being taught in universities right now, but curated well in a room with the story told, I will make people feel something. Now, that was an excellent answer, firstly, but it was also enough for me. That was enough for me. I want to make people feel something. So, she also said to me, the devil is in the details, in how you frame them, in the font that you use and the little signs next to them. So she got me to think about not just the art, but how am I going to present it and how am I going to talk about it? What are the stories that I'm going to share to help people to come into my world? Number 4, release the outcome. So hard for us humans. Now, there was a part of me that would have loved to have had a sold out first art show. A part of me would have loved that. But when I think about what I really wanted for the night, I had to come back to what Hillary said. I wanted a beautiful community evening. I wanted to invite people into this world and I wanted us to have a nice time. But when I released the expectation of what I thought a successful art show needed to be, I was able to just relax into whatever it was going to be. Now, the fact that I sold one of the paintings was a massive boost. It was a really beautiful thing. Number 5, the 5th thing I learned, deadlines are king, right? I gave myself that deadline. I gave myself the end date in order to create something. I've done it with my books as well, with writing the first drafts, with finishing the second drafts, giving myself a deadline in order to not just meander and take a really long time to do something, which can be a danger when you have a personal project. A work project, you're always going to work to a deadline, and a personal project, just stretch that bad boy out for as long as you like, but deadlines help you to stay on track. The takeaway that I really want you to take from this whole thing is you don't have to be the best at something in order to show and share your work. And by offering to show and share your work, you're not suggesting that you're the best at something. But could you imagine if you waited until you were the best at something before you shared it, right? Where it's the sharing that also allows you to get better. You have this time, this period of enforced creation because you're going to show it and share it. And then the showing and sharing allows you the feedback in real time to know how to improve for moving forward. You also don't have to be qualified in order to do a thing. You can do it just because you want to. You can do it just because you have a love for it. And you don't have to do anything with the intention of sharing it. You can do things purely for pleasure and purely for fun. And I highly encourage you to do that. Painting has been one of the greatest gifts that I have given myself since the beginning of COVID. It is something that I started out doing purely for pleasure and purely for fun. I did give myself this recent challenge, but I may just go back to doing it for fun. Finding something that you can lose time in, lose yourself in and express yourself through is a really, really powerful way to spend time, but also to process yourself, your life and your experiences. You don't need permission to try something new. You don't need permission to begin something badly. You give yourself permission to begin. If you haven't seen the work, jump over to Instagram and have a look if this has made you curious. If you would like to drop me a line on how you felt about this episode of How Are You Really? Or if you would like to ask a question with your own How Are You Really? We'd always love to have you over here at Big Stuff. See you soon. Bye. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of Big Stuff as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, it would really help me if you wanted to share it with just one person that you think is going to get something out of it. And also feel free to drop a comment. All of these things really help podcasts to gain more ears, and that's what we're really here for. Also, be sure to subscribe, then you will never miss an episode. If you want to find out more about me, who I am, what I do, then you can go and check me out at daniellecolley.com.au. I'll see you next episode for more big stuff.